Hey, Brian Miller here, and thanks so much for tuning in to Thursday Thoughts. This week's episode is called Neural Nostalgia and Musical Connection. So Billie Eilish is in the news again. It was just announced today, the day that I'm recording this, that she has written and will be recording the new James Bond theme song for the upcoming movie, No Time to Die. Now, as a diehard Bond fanatic, no pun intended, lifelong obsessive Bond fanatic, I was actually thrilled to hear this, even though until very recently, I had never heard the name Billie Eilish before. I just recently discovered Billie Eilish as a result of watching the American Music Awards with my wife, or more to the point, my wife was watching the American Music Awards and I was in the same room. So if you don't know like I didn't, let me bring you into this world. Billie Eilish is an 18-year-old pop singer, or singer if you think pop is a pejorative term depending on your musical tastes. She's an 18-year-old singer with 34 music awards already under her belt. That is insane. I mean, I don't care if you like her or not, that's an accomplishment. But she recently made headlines because Jimmy Kimmel asked her to name the members of Van Halen, and Billie Eilish had never even heard of Van Halen. I know. So obviously the internet exploded with this. How dare this 18-year-old punk not pay respect to the rock shoulders on which she stands? I remember being that guy as a teenager and young adult, right? Just like a full-on music snob who dismissed pop, country, hip-hop, electronic. Like, if it wasn't four sweaty dudes banging out power chords, then it's not real music, right? I'm embarrassed now by how I used to act in relation to my favorite music, movies, television, art, but I also understand the instinct. Our artistic tastes are not just deeply personal, but they're rooted in our childhood, our memories, our stories, our nostalgia, our experiences. And as you can probably guess, there's actually good psychological reasons for that. The music we listen to during our teenage years, it activates our brain's pleasure circuits, releases all kinds of powerful drugs like dopamine and serotonin. Psychologist Mark Joseph Stern writes this: between the ages of 12 and 22, our brains undergo rapid neurological development, and the music we love during that decade seems to get wired into our lobes for good. When we make neural connections to a song, we also create a strong memory trace that becomes laden with heightened emotion. These hormones tell our brain that everything is incredibly important, especially the songs that form the soundtrack to our teenage dreams. So if you were a hormonal teenager in the late 70s and early 80s, you might actually think that Ain't Talking About Love is one of the greatest songs ever written, you know, by the poet David Lee Roth. And there's nothing wrong with that. In response to the backlash and Twitter hate over Billie Eilish's, supposed, disrespecting of rock royalty, Wolfgang Van Halen, the son of Eddie Van Halen, legendary guitarist who founded Van Halen, and current bass player for Van Halen, tweeted this: "Music is supposed to bring us together, not divide us. Listen to what you want, and don't shame others for not knowing what you like. If you haven't heard of Billie Eilish, go check her out. She's cool. If you haven't heard of Van Halen, go check them out. They're cool." Right on, Wolfgang. Billie Eilish is 18 years old, born a few months after the attacks on September 11th. She grew up listening to Green Day, Avril Lavigne, and Justin Bieber. These were her influences. These were the artists that made up her youth. And for what it's worth, she's still in that phase. She's 18. She's in that 12 to 22 phase. It would be ridiculous for us to expect her to have the same connection to classic rock as we do. Art is incredibly subjective, and that's the beauty. You're not required to listen to, watch, or experience anything that doesn't move you in the way you'd like to be moved. But within that fact is an opportunity to connect. The next time you're having a conversation with someone who's got a very different interest in music or movies or art than you do, try this. I've always been a insert your favorite thing kind of person, and I've never really gotten into insert their favorite thing. What is it that moves you about their favorite thing? So, for example, I've always been a classic rock kind of person. I've never really gotten into hip hop. What is it that you love about hip hop? What moves you about hip hop? So if you're talking about music, find out, is it the instrumentation, the lyrics, the feeling, the mood? If it's movies, is it the scripting, the actors, the pacing, the tone, the rhythm, the subtext? Then if this is someone you care about, make an effort. Search out that favorite thing of theirs and listen to it, watch it, or experience it with their interests in mind. You may not love it. In fact, you probably won't even like it. You're not expected to change your mind. The purpose, the goal of connection is not agreement, it's understanding. My stepfather used to drive me to high school every morning on my mom's days. I was going to high school in my dad's district, and so the bus didn't come all the way to where my mom was, even though it was just 10, 15 minutes away. It was out of district. So my stepfather, Kevin, he had to take me all the way from our house, like 30 minutes out of his way, to bring me to high school at the crack of dawn, and then drive all the way back past where we started to get himself to work. He did that every morning of high school until I owned a car senior year, and I really didn't appreciate that at the time. Most mornings we'd drive in silence, or maybe there'd be the radio on faintly in the background. But this one morning I got in the car with my new Sammy Hagar on the Wabaritas CD, and I asked Kevin if we could put it on. He reluctantly agreed, and I knew he didn't want to because he often scoffed at the kind of music I was into, preferring Norah Jones and big band and jazz to Van Halen or The Who. But he's begrudgingly allowed me to put on my Sammy Hagar album that morning, and we listened to it quietly in the background, in silence together as we drove to school. I got out, went to school, and then went to my dad's for a few days. So a few days later, I came back from my dad's house, and it was the next morning. Got in the car with Kevin to drive to school, and he said, he goes, I put on the radio the other day, and I forgot that you had left your CD here in the car, and it was already in, so I just let it play. He goes, this Sammy Hagar guy, he's actually got some pretty good lyrics in some of these songs. What's your favorite song on this album? Put it on. Go ahead, put it on. I was shocked. I'm still shocked thinking back. This is 20 years ago now. I mean, I'm still shocked thinking back on that. So we drove to school that morning listening to Sammy Hagar on the Wabaritas rock out, talking about lyrics and themes and guitar bits. It never happened again, and our relationship mostly went back to maintaining its shaky status quo. But for a moment, Kevin saw me, and I'll always be grateful for that. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning into Thursday Thoughts. This is a function of my podcast as well as a video series that I'm doing here on the YouTube channel. If you're interested in the podcast, go ahead and click the link in the description below. It is undergoing a rebrand right now in between seasons. It's been called One New Person ever since it came out as kind of a relation, because it had a relationship with my book, Three New People. It was launched in tandem with the book, but it is about to be retitled. Although if you do already listen and enjoy it, it's going to be basically the same sorts of conversations, the same tone, the same questions, the same vibe, just a slight rebrand. So look out for that, but you can check that in the description. If you enjoyed this video or anything else I've got here on the channel, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and always remember that our world is a shared experience. Have a great day.